Alrighty, it's 7 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Help me with the roll call there, Molly.
Sure thing. Alderperson Henry. Here. Alderperson Schaefer.
Here.
Alderperson Valdy.
Here.
Alderperson Dean.
Here.
Alderperson Grimmer.
Here.
Alderperson Price.
Here.
Alderperson Eicher.
Here.
Mayor Atwell.
Present.
Administrator Hafner.
Here.
Great, thank you very much. All right, right before the public hearing, I'm going to ask our city planner, Amy, to come up and give us kind of an overview of what we'll be talking about up here as far as what's on the public hearing. Sometimes we have people come up before the public hearing just so we can make sure everybody has the, or citizens' comments for that matter, has the latest and greatest information.
Okay, so, Mike,
Yeah, you
can
need
put
to-
the map on the screen? I'm not used to being in this spot.
It's got to be really close to you.
It's a lot.
Amy, did you want my lapel mic? Will that make it easier for you?
Oh, no, wait a minute. All the applicants have to use that mic.
That one, you want your mouth?
right.
Mouth has to be about
that close to
10
it.
inches
You just
away.
have to lean in really
Yeah,
close
it
to
has to
it. They say kiss the microphone.
hear me?
No.
Not yet. Can you hear me now?
No.
Seriously
But it's
close.
not working. Hello?
Try the other microphone,
Can
Amy.
you hear me?
Yeah, try the other one.
I'm not a very quiet person.
That sounds like
Can you
it's
hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah. When you're that close,
That
I
one,
can hear
a
you.
little closer.
Okay. So my topic, do I just go start?
Yeah, just go.
Okay, so the agenda item is the downtown district expansion of the central business area on the land use plan. So this is, well, before we even talk about that, because I'm afraid I'm gonna forget it, I get paranoid. The Delafield Cemetery, which is to the south of the area, in question, it's well, you guys know where the Delafield Cemetery is, on the east side of Genesee Street, just north of 94. The ordinance that you're considering does request that go to the institutional category. So for whatever reason, it's in the medium density residential category right now. So I want to get that out of the way. That's in the ordinance. And then we're also proposing, or in the ordinance, to expand the central business area. I don't know if Mike can put the map up, but I believe it includes 7 properties east of the Cushing Elementary School. This came up as part of the focus group project as an area where we could potentially expand the downtown district and create a gateway to downtown. We had, hold on here, we had several meetings with the property owners here at, the Plan Commission considered it over a period of 4 meetings, and the subject property owners and everybody within 300 feet was invited to attend all of those meetings. In addition to that, I did invite the subject property owners, not the neighbors, to attend an in-house meeting with just me as the planner. And as part of that, we sat down, we talked about any concerns that they may have expanding commercial, because this is very much a predominantly residential area. As soon as you go south of Town Bank, which is just north of the northernmost highlighted red zone. And we originally were going to try to create a business zoning district that would allow residential and business uses as a zoning district that would be incorporated at the same time as this land use plan amendment that's being proposed. But with the amount of concern, wanting to know what exactly was going to go on those lots, ensuring that they really are low-intensity commercial uses, the owners asked if we are going to pursue this to require those rezonings to come in one at a time. So to add a extra layer to that, because if somebody were to come in and propose a commercial use and zone it, what we're proposing to be CBD4. I don't want to focus on it too much tonight because really this is a big picture proposal. That use could change over time, and then it would be zoned appropriately, and they could potentially just carry on. So an additional layer is to also require a conditional use permit. So if anybody comes in to change these properties from residential to commercial, they're gonna need to zone it, and then on top of that, get a conditional use permit, which will allow an opportunity for everyone affected directly or those within 300 feet to be individually notified of any proposed request. The land use plan that you're considering tonight, again, is simply to expand the central business area, which allows or promotes a mix of residential and/or commercial. So expanding the central business area does not even necessarily mean that anything has to change, quite frankly. It's calling out that this is part of that downtown zone or area. And then we're adding a special use designation to make it very clear that if the conversion does occur to commercial, it would need to be very low intensity, and that the Plan Commission and Council would have, total control over what type of use and the intensity of the use at the time that that proposal is made. So we also, as we met with the property owners of the area, they were concerned with retail use being incorporated. And so when we get into the zoning district element, which you'll consider probably at next month's meeting if this were to pass tonight, that has been struck through. So the only uses that would be allowed if the areas were to get zoned in the future would be retail, or I'm sorry, not retail, service or office, and or like the retail that's accessory to those service and office uses, such as maybe like shampoo products for a beauty salon. When the focus group met a year ago and they thought that this might be an ideal area to expand the downtown district, they were really thinking that it's almost an expansion of what you have as a home occupation use, which is a use that can be allowed in any residential district. However, it can only make up 25% of a home, and you can have very limited employment and what have you. So the idea here was to allow those similar type uses, but not require the residential use. So, but small scale uses that could fit in a residential style building or not necessarily include customer traffic. One thing to just note is that there is a dental office that is being proposed on the southernmost property. And that property, that's probably the most extensive type of use you would see out here. And that property is unique in the fact that they have access off of Poplar Path and Genesee Street. So they do have and it's a double lot. So they do have a little extra room for parking and stormwater facilities and access off of a different road. Otherwise, Plan Commission has acknowledged that getting in and out of Genesee Street is a challenge. And so these, that's why those other uses on the rest of the lots would be super minor. We can go through the public hearing, and I'm here to definitely answer any other questions. Hopefully I explained it well enough. If not,
Yeah.
feel free to.
That sounds great. Thank you very much for doing that, Amy. So then we'll go ahead and get the public hearing going. And then we'll have Amy come back up again when this is on the agenda for the under the Planning Commission section. Okay, so we'll move on to 4A, public hearing number 1, topic amend text of Chapter 7, land use element of the City of Delafield 2030 comprehensive plan and related map amendment to map 7-4 master land use plan map. Applicant, City of Delafield. And the matter at hand is amending the text of the 2030 comprehensive plan. All right, is there anyone that would like to speak to public hearing number 1? Come on up.
Marcia Stocks, 226 Genesee Street. Amy went over most of the big points, but my objection to this is the way it was reverse engineered. The property at the southernmost part of this exhibit was marketed as probable commercial, although at the time, last year, it was a residential property. This neighborhood is a very static neighborhood. It's filled with people who've been there for many years, if not decades, okay? And suddenly the proposal for the dental office comes up after the focus group has looked this over and apparently got a question about it from the former owner who was having difficulty selling that property. So my main objection is that we were pulled into this and it was reverse engineered, I believe, to avoid spot zoning. I don't deny that that lot is probably okay for commercial, but the rest of us were not really interested in being part of a commercial district. We'd like to have the confidence that in our old age, which is heading our way quickly for me, that I'll be able to live in that home for as long as I desire. Thank you for your time, and I thank you also for the Plan Commission for listening.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anyone else like to speak? Come on up. Oh, I was pointing to the lady. We'll let you go next.
My name is Barbara Bannon. I live at 700 Poplar Path. And I was at the meeting last month about this, and my concern is I've not heard any discussion about the traffic on Poplar Path. I live on Poplar Path, and I have for almost 20 years, and I am really amazed at the amount of traffic, especially people that come off the freeway and are lost and are coming down and around. And I really think some sort of study should be done about the traffic on Poplar Path before you add a dentist office. Even a small dentist office requires parking for the dentist, the technicians, which are usually several, and then your several clients. It's rather a large parking that you're going to need. And I just would like to see some information on how that traffic is going to be impacted. Just last week, I believe there was an accident at that intersection because you have the freeway, and it's very busy on C. And I just haven't heard anything about the traffic impact that a business on that corner will be. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Phil, you want to go next?
Good evening, Phil Casson, 1208 Genesee Street. I had a few concerns about the proposal as well. First of all, it seems that in talking to the owners, it's not something that they want. The proposed change from the current zoning and use for these residents to the central business district would be, depending upon how it's done, could potentially be a soft version of eminent domain. If you change this and they don't want it, you will eventually be forcing them out. These houses don't look like they could really work well for an in-home business, as was mentioned. There would have to be some kind of redevelopment, a point I'll get back to in a moment. But if this is actually changed and they're allowed to stay there and other people are coming in and buying these properties as commercial, they will essentially be forced out because if you haven't talked to them, there's current residents that have just moved in there just 6 years ago and they thought they were going to be in this house for some time. I also have to ask, why is business or commercial better than medium density residential? Seeing some homes when you get off the interstate or other newer residential units as one enters the city would seem to be much more welcoming and charming than getting off the interstate and immediately seeing businesses. It's a community. It's not a strip mall that we have here. It also seems to me, from what I've heard, that there would be some expenses incurred by the city for a new alleyway. I also would have to ask the city why to push this type of change when the city would have a very expensive task at hand of creating an alleyway over extremely difficult elevations and then potentially have to use eminent domain to get rid of some of the current structures such as the Stocks garage or Foyt's home itself. Why would this city a city with a revenue stream issue already, push for development that requires the city to make major investments. Instead, leaving the current use and zoning to medium density residential would allow for residential redevelopment, something that the city would perhaps not have to invest in at all. I would also have to mention that it seems like a real at-heart issue is here that my final comment is, while it seems to be a conservative political issue to value business, I thought it was even more important to value individuals' rights. And at least that's what I understood when I always hear the "don't tread on me." However, that seems to only apply in very specific situations, not this one. Changing the land use zoning against the residents' desires is the antithesis of protecting individuals' rights. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your comments. Who else would like to speak? Come on up, ma'am.
Hi, Jacqueline Foyts, 208 Genesee Street. 6 years ago, my husband and I moved back to Wisconsin and began the search for our first home. We had a fair amount of flexibility on location, basically anywhere between Watertown and Menominee Falls. But we wanted to find a community where we could own a single-family home with a yard and still be able to walk to downtown area with shops and restaurants. There are not many such communities left in southeastern Wisconsin. They have been replaced by the combination of a large commercial districts like Delafield's Highway 83 area and surrounding but unconnected suburbs. So we had our work cut out for us. Not much inventory and a highly desirable type of home. As one of our targets, we drew a circle around Delafield on Zillow that included all of the homes that are walkable to downtown. Out of curiosity, I pulled that Zillow search back up before this meeting. There's exactly one home currently listed for sale in that search region, a single-family home out on Cushing Road, on the very edge of what we considered walkable to downtown. I know that there have been discussions about the demand for commercial property in the downtown Delafield area, but there is currently significantly more available commercial property than there is residential property. With that in mind, why is the Economic Development Focus Group, the Plan Commission, and now the Common Council seeking to eliminate residential property in favor of commercial property? What is the motivation? Anyways, the process took us a few months. We lost a few bidding wars, but we eventually found the home we are in today. Tim, I know that you have commented that the Plan Commission has been going slow with this change, but it took us more time to find and purchase this home than the Plan Commission has spent deliberating rezoning it. Our home is older, but well-maintained. Hardwood floors, small backyard, but pretty large front yard. We have the kind of neighbors who watch a kid while you rush your spouse to the emergency room. We have beautiful perennial flowers planted by the former owner, Melba, and we are able to walk to downtown Delafield. We began crafting plans on some of the slight remodeling we would need to make this home one that we could retire in. If this measure passes, we will have to begin the search for a new home. For the reasons listed in our written comments, we do not feel that we can stay in our home for the long run. I don't tell you this to be dramatic or to elicit your sympathy, but so that you know what you are voting on today. I understand the difference between a land use plan and a rezoning, but on a long enough time horizon, they are the same thing. Today you are voting on whether we can continue to live in our home in the way we had intended when we purchased it. Today you are voting on whether the residents of Delafield have any rights whatsoever to maintain their immediate neighborhoods. And as you all know, this is the first of a few such measures. Today you are voting on the future of Delafield. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Anyone else? Anyone else like to speak to public hearing number 1? Come on up.
Nancy Rademacher, formerly Nancy Harvey, whatever on that. Rademacher.
Okay, thank you. And what was the address again?
200 Genesee.
Okay, thank you.
26 years ago, when we were engaged and looking and planning on getting married, we were looking at houses. We looked at houses all over the area. Dousman, Waukesha, we were all over. We found the house in Delafield. and it met our needs. It was a location where we could get to where we wanted, but it was a residential. We wanted the residential. We both grew up in communities where you could go out walking, that you could trust your neighbors. When we bought the house, it was with the intention that this is our forever home. And I've thought that all the way through when I made the final mortgage payment over a year ago. Or was it 2 years? Anyway, it's been really nice owning it. The idea of my neighbor selling her house and suddenly there's a accountant in it changes the whole feeling of that being a residential area. I understand the dental office, and for the most part, she's right next to me. I have no problem with the dental office there. But for the rest of us to be turned into a changing of a district to where suddenly we lose that security of residential is scary, and it's upsetting. And I don't really want to move. And I also think about the fact that I look at the traffic out there all the time. I'm always worried about my dogs, getting near the road. And if you increase that traffic, which is what any kind of more businesses along are going to do, that's going to be a big impact. It's not like we're a flat road. We have that rise there that causes more accidents, and we are close to the on and off ramp. So that's basically what it is. It's just I never foresaw anything to indicate that our area was going to be changed on zoning. Thank you.
Great, thank you for the comments. Anyone else? Come on up.
I'm Michelle Kelly. I own 124 Genesee Street and the empty lot next to the cemetery. I am the dental office trying to put a business over there. My dental office is open 28 hours a week. I have 6 employees. I will be able to provide my own parking off of the street, and we are only there minimal hours. So I will not impact the traffic flow that is concerned of Poplar. Yes, our entrance will be on and off of Poplar Street just because of the way it's been, but ATC has already given us the go, and they actually prefer us to have a parking lot on that property to be able to keep it accessible for them for maintaining the lines. So they're all for having a parking lot there because it will make their life easier to keep power lines at bay and maintained. As far as the home that I own there, I have no plans to necessarily change it. It is rented currently. I have renters in there. They're a nice family that's going to continue that. My business that I have proposed for the empty lot is more structured to look like a home than a business. Yes, it will be a business and it'll be larger than the homes in that area, but it will be still similar to the homes and style of Delafield. We plan to have more of a, homey nautical feel, similar to like a Nantucket or like a, farmhouse style home, single level, not 2-story. So it'll be level with that area and keep the impact to the neighbors minimal. We'll also plan to landscape and accordingly to not impact anybody in that area. As far as the plans of Delafield, if you look around, there is no place to build in Delafield. I have a business existing in Delafield. I'd like to keep it Delafield Family Dental. I don't want to necessarily change it and move it out of the city. But there's no place to build and there's no place to expand. And the only way it's going to change is unfortunately by taking over businesses or homes that are in the area. And if you look at the downtown area, numerous homes have been converted into businesses. I understand the neighbors don't want to change their building, their homes, and it's going to change the way things feel, but the way you have proposed it necessarily keeps it low impact and doesn't necessarily affect everybody as severely as I think they could. There's a lot of, insurance agents, and if you look at the traffic flow that comes in and out of those, it's sometimes very minimal because most of those agents are only seeing a couple people maybe here and there throughout the day. Most of their business is done via phone. Same with attorneys. If it's a small impact attorney doing minimal work, it's not necessarily going to have a lot of work that's coming and going. Yes, the traffic is awful. Getting in and out of the property over there is hard off of Genesee Street, especially with the school hours, but it's like that everywhere in Delafield. My current business is off of Highway 83 on the frontage road, and it's busy over there. But it's not easy to, the traffic patterns of everything is constantly changing, and the city is evolving and things are continuing to meander and become better. And if you look at the plan that's been in existence forever, this is unfortunately fitting for it. Do I want it to change? Not necessarily, but it's not going to. My big concern was just the lot. I have no concerns about the home in any nature. It will continue to be a home as far as I'm concerned. But as far as traffic studies, like I said, my business will be maintained to that lot. It will not affect any of the businesses or the homes in that area. All the parking is internal. So that's it.
Great. Thank you for the comments. Anyone else? Come on up.
Jacob Foyts, 208 Genesee Street. I considered whether or not I wanted to provide comments tonight. You know, the letters I receive in the mail that says the Plan Commission meeting that comes after this one has already been scheduled. The notice of this public hearing that says there's another Plan Commission meeting that comes right before this one, that's already been scheduled. The calendar that's on www.delafieldgrowth.com says that proceedings for this are going to wrap up in June. The fact that the city planner, and it's been a pleasure working with Amy, comes up and speaks before to lay the pro case for the decision that's in front of you. I'm sure that's in Robert's Rules of Order somewhere. I'm not fully familiar with it, but I'm sure that that's the appropriate thing that should be done here. Like I said, I considered not coming and speaking tonight, but I decided the council needed to hear what they're actually voting on tonight, because you're voting on a land use plan change. You're also voting on approving what has happened since January, how this process has gone. This is the first of about half a dozen different such measures. And as a resident, as a citizen affected by this, it's been very poor. It has not been a great experience. If you approve this tonight, if you move this forward, you're saying that's the way we want to do business, that's the way we want to treat our residents. You're approving the fact that citizens that don't properly understand Robert's Rules of Orders get a chance to speak at a meeting when they don't understand the intricacies of it. You're approving that the city can issue requests for engineering to be done to bulldoze people's homes in favor of alleys, have that communicated to the citizens without any context whatsoever, and have them have to sit and wait until the next Plan Commission meeting to understand what's really going to affect them. And you're saying that this is okay, that we can stack these things on top of each other, that it's all just due course, that we can do this as fast as we can humanly do, and that's the right thing to do. You're telling us all that that's the way that you want to process these next half dozen measures. So my recommendation to you tonight is not to vote no. I definitely don't want you to approve this. You saw my written comments. You heard my wife speak. My recommendation is that you delay this, that you don't take a decision today of any type, and then you actually take some time to gather real citizen comment. I was driving my son home from swimming lessons right before this meeting, and something dawned on me, and then I asked my wife about it. I said, do you know when the next Delafield Art Walk is? She said, no. I said, where do you think you would go to figure out when the next Delafield Art Walk is? She said, oh, the sign's outside the cemetery. This city has no problem communicating to its citizens. It's government actions like this that we somehow find a hard time communicating. And if for whatever reason we can't put a sign outside of the cemetery that says there's a public hearing that's going to affect all of you, I guarantee you there's parents of that school that would want to know about the rezoning that's happening of the properties across the street. If you can't put a sign in the cemetery, I'll put it in my front yard. I'll pay for it. You guys can decide the messaging. I'll decide the messaging, whatever. But let's actually let the citizens of this community know in a real substantial way about the changes that are planned. Again, what you're voting on tonight is a land use plan change, but it's also on how the rest of these properties, how the rest of this process is going to go. And I hope you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Come on up.
Susie Thompson, 700 Milwaukee Street. One thing that's been touched on tonight, but to me as a citizen of Delafield and living in downtown Delafield, I'm surprised it was not brought out more strongly. We currently have 5 blocks of alleys. When an alley is plowed, and we just got done with winter, everybody, so remember when the snow plows come through, when the alley is plowed, where does the snow go? And when the snow melts, where does water go? the people on Genesee Street are dealing with the hill, and we're dealing with the way the water's going to flow from rain and from snow melt. And right now, we have alleys that need to be taken down to the base and repitched because they're not in good shape, and it's not on the city's plan coming up soon. But if you're going to put an alley behind where there's never been one before, and it was not allowed for that when those homes were built, you're changing the way that neighborhood is going to feel. But you're also changing the city's responsibility to maintain an alley. And if you're saying that if these properties change, you want the use and the access to go through an alley, you're putting more responsibility on the alley than the one that's between Milwaukee and Main Street that's near me. You're asking people to go up and down where right now are the alley near us. It's difficult to get through when there's snow. And if you don't have room to pull over by somebody else's driveway off of the alley, it's difficult, and it's difficult for the snowplows, and they're great about giving right-of-way, but where's the snow going? Are you going to put it in the cemetery? And I can see more problems for the city putting an alley where there hasn't been one before. And I state that as having been in real estate for 31 years. I just retired in the last 6 months. I did commercial as well as residential. Tim, you know a lot about access and availability, and Tom, Kent, all of you. You know it, you understand it. For the people who live there asking for a delay on this, I can see the use of the vacant lot for the dentist's office. It makes sense. I don't think anybody's going to want to build a house there, but to snug up possibly, and I haven't seen the proposed design, or I understand the size they want to do, but I can see the use of that, and if they have an in and out, perhaps the people who get lost and go on Poplar Path will pull into their parking lot at the dentist office and do a turnaround and go back out quicker.
Hey, Susie, can we get you to wrap it up?
Let's be serious about considering the cost of putting in an alley, how it's going to be maintained. That's a big part of this, and I don't think that's been properly addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Anyone else like to speak? Going once, going twice. Public hearing number 1 is now closed. Okay, we will move on to number 5, approval of the following minutes, April 18th, 2022, regular meeting, and April 19th, 2022, organizational meeting.
I'll move to approve April 18th's regular meeting minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
I'll move to approve April 19th's organizational meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay,
Thank you.
we'll move on to 6, City of Delafield citizens' comments. Are there any other citizens that would like to speak to anything else on the agenda? Phil, come on up. It's a twofer for you.
You didn't say on or off the agenda, so actually my comments were just going to simply be about the land use map itself, so my within.
Sure, have at it.
Okay. Good evening, again. Phil Casson, 1208 Genesee Street. Regarding the land use map, so much attention has been paid attention to the development of our city, yet little to no attention has been paid attention to our natural assets. Specifically, no less than 3 environmental corridors have been created in recent years with public or private money, yet according to our land use map and our current zoning, those very corridors are zones that people could potentially build homes. Property number 1 is the St. John's Plaza. It is no longer planned for residential use, obviously, but it is currently lake residential on land use as well as medium density zoning. I would request that you would consider rezoning it to RL2 Lake, should be rezoned from RL2 Lake Residential to Conservancy. Likewise, unless the city plans on selling the property on Oak Street, the park that is there should also be updated in the land use and zoning, just as St. John's. Lastly, on West Shore Drive, there's the new Spengler Preserve. This area is only slightly smaller than Fireman's Park, is a great asset to our community, helps to keep our lake clean and keeps waters filtered before they enter the lake. That area is currently listed as a low-density residential and lake residential. It should be changed to a conservancy as well, just like the Frog Hollow that is on the south end of the lake. They are both actually going to be, currently are owned by the Waukesha County Land Conservancy and should be properly reflected in the both land use plan as well as the zoning. So I would ask that you would consider those things in future meetings. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments? Come on up.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Common Council members. My name is James Sonnenberg. I'm a candidate for Waukesha County Sheriff. I wanted to introduce.
Spell your last name.
It's S as in Sam, Oneberg as in George.
Thank you. And the address, please.
South 90, West 22970 Rose Avenue, Big Bend, Wisconsin 53103.
Thank you.
I'm just here to introduce myself. I've been with the Sheriff's Department for 25 years. I am running for Sheriff of Waukesha County. I'm also your school resource officer for the Kettle Moraine School District. I work very close with Chief Kale and all his staff here in Delafield. So wanted to stop in, at least introduce, say hi to everybody. Please feel free to reach out, contact me if you have any questions or concerns, and I look forward to hopefully working with everyone in the near future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments? Seeing none, citizens' comments are now closed. We'll move on to number 7, the consent agenda. Nothing on the consent agenda. We'll move on to number 8, boards, committees, and commission reports. Licenses A, Molly.
So the licenses that are in the packet, there's, I think, about a handful of them. These are the folks that completed their applications in full prior to April 15th. Statutes require that those licenses be granted on or before June 15th. So this is those, they still have to have their agent background checks completed. So it's just wrapping up that portion due to the statute requirements. There'll be more that will be coming through at the next meeting when the rest of the applications are put through and corrected and whatnot, so.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to approve those?
Yep, motion to approve the alcohol beverage retail licenses to be granted on June 15th, pending agent background checks.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Second by Wayne. All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, we're going to go on to B, Planning Commission. Commission reports, and I'm going to have jump down to 2B. I'll take it out a little out of order. DLC 0784971003, DLC 0784971004, and DLC 07849575, 1100 and 1210 South 83, owner Elmbrook Church. Applicant Jennifer Atkin. Applicant is requesting a conditional use amendment to allow summer programming, including the installation of a temporary tent to provide shelter for the outdoor activities. Is the applicant here? Seeing no applicant?
Well, that's fine. I'll just explain. Because they're subject to a conditional use, any changes to their site plan need to be approved. They're asking to put up like a 12-foot by 10-foot tent for summer Bible study or something. And so it went by really fast. And so I'll make a motion to approve this item 8B.
Danielle, seconds. All right, is there any discussion?
Just a question, that does not require a public hearing of change in the conditional use permit?
It does.
Was there one? There was
It
one.
was held at public.
Yeah, we had it at the
Commission.
Plan Commission meeting.
Okay, that's what, all right, appreciate that.
It's an enormous formality for a very small change, and that's kind of how we're set up to do for any conditional use, which is, can take us into our next topic too, but anyway.
All right, thank you.
All right, motion is second. Any discussion? Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions passes. Okay, we will move back to the original order. B2A, ordinance number 796, an ordinance amending the 2030 comprehensive plan relating to Chapter 7 land use element in the land use plan map specific to text amendments related to the central business land use category and the expansion of the central business land use category with a special use area number 1 designated on the land use plan map. The property is impacted by the land use plan map amendment from the medium residential category to the expanded central business category with a special use designation would include approximately 8 properties. I'm going to try to save the time of reading them all. Resident category to the industrial category, residential category to the institutional category, that would be the cemetery. All right, Amy, you want to come back up, please? Okay, any other overview you want to give there, or otherwise maybe?
Yeah, I think one thing I just wanted to add, this area didn't actually come up, it was not initiated by the focus group as a change. It came up because right before we were starting to meet as a focus group, that southernmost property was for sale, or the southernmost 2 properties were for sale. And the property owner was having a very difficult time marketing the property for residential purposes. We were getting several phone calls from potential buyers that wanted to use it for commercial use. And so he knew that he was going to be challenged with that. The people who did buy it bought it at a risk. They knew that there was no, that it was not zoned appropriately or on the land use plan accordingly. But I just think it's important to know that, you know, you do have several residential property owners that are affected by the land use change. However, that southernmost property was significantly challenged in trying to sell their lot. We also have gotten a few calls from people that are interested in some of the other properties for low intensity commercial uses. But taking another step back, so tonight's matter is the modifying the land use plan potentially to the central business area. So when we looked at that southernmost property, it is directly north of 94 minus the cemetery, across from the school, and you've got the ramp, and it is a more challenging lot to develop as a residential unit. And then as we look north, it did seem like a natural transition to connect to the downtown area. But the land use plan that's being proposed was written very clearly to ensure that it's really the residential uses that are permitted by right, not the commercial uses. And so in the new land use plan language, there's a section that says, because the land use plan category does talk about mixed uses. And then it says there are areas beyond the central core of downtown and along the fringe of downtown that are appropriate for residential use without any commercial activities. These areas are reflected through zoning. And again, remember, we have no intention on amending the zoning category on any of those lots that are not coming in at their own request to modify zoning. They will continue to be R3 residential zone. This is again just changing the land use plan. We will see a request from that southernmost property for the dental office. And then the special use area 1 states, and I'm just going to read it because in case you haven't, I think it's important to know what it's saying. Areas designated in this special use area are included in the central business category because they are a logical extension to downtown. Although it may be appropriate to transition these areas from residential to commercial uses that provide neighborhood services and are compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods, it is important to consider the individual site conditions prior to allowing this transition to take place. Properties within special use area 1 will only be zoned to allow for commercial uses on an individual basis with consideration given to individual site conditions based on projected traffic, noise, intensity of use, compatibility with the neighborhood, Any zoning amendment shall be accompanied by a plan development conditional use, which may include conditions that provide greater flexibility or restrictions related to use, dimensional, and area standards, and requirements for open space amenities, landscaping, lighting, and signage. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew what that language stated. And then related to the alleyway, that is something that the Plan Commission explored at their first meeting discussing the topic. You know, and if you think about it, really, they're taking a look at it and exploring all options. So they did talk about it. They had the engineering staff write a report, and the engineering staff did address some of the same concerns that the applicants did, including steep topography, the need for retaining walls, tree cutting, and impacts to the neighbors to the east. And since then, the Plan Commission has not pursued that alleyway, and I don't believe it was ever going to be any kind of a public alleyway with city financing required or maintenance. It would have been like a private access point, because those properties north of the dental clinic, knowing that they don't have access off of another road, they aren't going to get, you know, if they were to rezone it, they are challenged with traffic. So the uses they're not going to be allowed, uses that require, I mean, they're small lots, any kind of significant parking, maybe none on site, or one or two spaces. So without that alleyway, that will make that even more challenging, which may be good if that's what the neighbors and owners are interested in, restricting that intensity.
Seeing as the city planner has just provided significant additional comments in favor of this measure, will citizens be allowed to speak again, or is that?
Yeah, so we're gonna have our deliberations up here, and that's why we had her speak, you know, up front beforehand. So, no, there won't be any additional discussion.
I have some negative comments to add, Jacob, so rest assured. I'm often bothered. I go back 11 years when the city tried to rezone my street and came up with very similar arguments. I live on Mill Street in between Bleecker and Lake. And the housing is more, I'd say, affordable. I'm a school teacher, and it was always necessary, and it was going to be the same assurances that I see here. But I see no change in the pattern, and the pattern is that the homeowners do not support this wonderful, logical thing. We sit and we look at each other and we nod and we say, yeah, we followed all the little paint-by-number steps. But I think Jacob said it most articulately, and honestly, it makes me very troubled that this is not the way we should make decisions. We should make decisions in accord with our citizens. They are the taxpayers. They own these homes. I bought my home at 816 Mill Street. It is my nest egg. And I know I chose a humble career as a teacher, but I had a great school district, and it's a wonderful community. And like Jacob and his wife, Jacqueline, I love the ability to walk downtown. And I think the argument that has been made by some of our citizens here about the affordability of homes and the neighborhood should be left intact. And Amy, I appreciate that you keep saying that the individual homeowners will be able to make these decisions one by one, but I see a divide and conquer strategy, and it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And I cannot stress enough, I would love to see all the people who own the homes who are going to be directly impacted, and I was on that council and I voted strongly against this. You buy a house across the street from a school and you got little ones, you're thinking, this is so great. My kids can walk across the street to school, can't beat it. You know, and you could tell me about the insurance agents, but frankly, they can work anywhere. My agent lives in Appleton. You know, I don't need to drive up there at all. We don't need to destroy a neighborhood because someone wants to, you know, run their brokerage firm out of the parking. It's their homes. Let the people decide. Let the city just Stop picking on us. I don't like this at all. I didn't like it when it came up in the Economic Development Council, and I really think this is another example of how we're doing it wrong.
I have some questions. What's the difference between like approving this and not approving this as far as for the homeowners? I mean, does it change anything if a buyer comes to the Planning Commission with a proposal to change the zoning and doing that, even if we've turned this down? I mean, what is the impact if we vote it down?
If somebody were to come in and propose a commercial use, outside of the home occupation, which is a commercial use that makes up less than 25% of your home in a residence, they would not be allowed to do it based on the land use plan. So if the city is going to consider a zoning change, it has to be in compliance with the land use plan. So right now it is medium density residential. So residential would be the only type of use allowed. With the exception of, there's a few conditional uses out there, but not the kind of uses that are.
But we're looking at commercial people coming in and trying to buy, and my concern is, are these people, I've heard them all talk about, these are their forever homes.
Yeah,
So why are they selling? Why are we worried about a potential commercial person coming in to buy a home from people who aren't selling?
Mm-hmm. Well, I was just answering her question, but we do have the southernmost property is proposed. They do have a proposal to.
And I think folks are. Yeah.
So if we turn this down, then that property would not be able to.
That's correct.
Okay. So
there are other options. So it's hard as a planner to categorize and separate. I wouldn't call any of this spot zoning because it's being carefully planned through the land use planning. But it's hard to have a whole central business area, then have a residential strip and then a commercial strip when it really is the whole thing is the similar transition. But one option you could do is you could convert it all to central business and then only allow commercial, because central business is, I think it's really important to note, it's allowing residential and or commercial. It's not strictly commercial. But you could state that commercial can only be allowed in this particular special use zone if it has an access off of a secondary public road, which would limit it to the southernmost property. So it's a different way of looking at it if no one else is interested in that zoning. I would just be a little struggled with having a land use category isolated to that one piece.
Amy, what are the challenges with spot zoning? I understand and I see the logic in extending these properties. I see the limited use, even if we did change the land use based on your testimony. But also I do understand the residents' perception. And, if they're individually coming, you can see if one property falls, well. So what are the challenges with spot zoning?
So I think it's really important, we're not zoning anything, nor are we at next month's meeting considering zoning.
Sorry.
They truly can stay residential as long as they want to with this land use change. If you did an individual land use change, I would almost recommend that square go to commercial because it's the central business is an area. It's an expanded area of downtown. And if you're going to isolate this from that downtown zone, I don't know that I would constitute it part of that. I think you could go either way with central business or commercial, but it would provide that dividing factor, I guess.
But if you do the commercial on a single property, then don't you run into spot zoning concerns?
Well, so the attorney and I have talked about this on several different properties. Spot zoning was a term used very frequently in the past, but since Wisconsin has created the smart growth law in the 90s, it's really the planning process that if the city is going through a process that's planning things through carefully and you're making an intentional effort, then the zoning is just coming along aside with that planning effort. So this is the first step. But you can't just go and spot zone a property commercial anymore. But you wouldn't be doing that here. You've planned and thought this through and have gone through this public participation process of a land use plan effort.
Didn't we do something that gave what was 7 Cs? That was zoned residential, wasn't it? No, it was
Well,
always commercial?
It is.
That was before the city was a city, and they got a special exemption.
Okay,
So
good. Yeah, I'm
7
just
Cs
wondering, wouldn't there be a way to carve out something for that one lot?
7 Cs is unique in that it is zoned residential. It's actually a legal non-conforming use. It was a restaurant prior to zoning being in existence. So a lot of those single restaurants on the lakes are legal non-conforming uses. And so
I'm just wondering if there isn't a way to work with that one lot and keep the other lots.
Sounds like you said there is.
Safe.
An auxiliary to a second.
As long as we
road.
follow a procedure, we can zone that dental
If you're
office
making-
commercial and keep the
if you're
7
making-
residential.
Yes, so one thing that is important, because land use plan modifications do have to follow a very specific procedure. A resolution has to be adopted by Plan Commission, and that's what you're considering, the resolution that came to Plan Commission. And oddly, the public hearing occurs in front of you, not in front of the Plan Commission. And that is why we sent out those letters, to make sure that the public had the opportunity to comment there as well. But this is the proper procedure per the statutes. If you want to go a different direction than the Plan Commission, you do have to send it back to them. You can't, in this particular type of action, you have to pass what they bring to you. You can't change it. So,
Gotcha.
you would state your recommendations, and then I would take it back to the Plan Commission.
So if I'm understanding, this is not that big a change, so why don't we send it back and do it more thoughtfully and say, hey, we have, is it 7 of the 8 properties?
If I'm understanding this correctly, this is not, this is giving the homeowners more flexibility to choose what they're doing with their property,
That's
not
correct.
less, right? They have the choice then, when they sell, that they have the opportunity to keep it residential or sell to a
Or sell it
business.
commercial, and they certainly have the right to keep it residential. So
But not my neighbor.
Right.
That's what
You're
I'm
right,
saying.
you're right.
But my neighbor could have commercial, and I want to keep it residential, and then the other person could be.
that's right.
It's dividing
That's the
neighborhood.
problem, is that you're not telling me I get to keep my area
My neighborhood.
residential because my neighbor could become
Yeah,
commercial.
and that is, that's true.
You wouldn't want it in any neighborhood that way.
So in all fairness, I do want to just state, I met with the homeowners, and I really thought that was before we created the special zoning district and the conditional use provisions that would require we wouldn't zone anything until they requested it, and it would require a public hearing for the zoning and the conditional use. So I met with them before we came up with that language, and we really genuinely thought that we were addressing their concerns by doing that. And we,
But you're not, because you're still in a situation
Receiving-
where somebody could have a zoning, a conditional use hearing, and approve a commercial entity next to me.
yeah.
When I wanted to
understand.
stay
I'm just telling
residential.
you that during that meeting, I thought that I had a large majority of their support, so.
And then one comment I'd like to ask, and I don't know if it should be addressed to you, but I'm reading your statement here on your comments, so I don't know if Kent or Tom will address this. The purpose of the project by the focus group was intended to help balance the city budget by increasing the city's tax base through responsible and sustainable growth. Those are your words. How do we need these 7 residential to change commercial to balance the city budget?
This is a very, very minor component of the overall plan. It wouldn't make, it would be almost negligible.
Right, so why?
So tonight, there's been a lot of talk that seems to be pointing this in the direction of staff or administration. Let's keep in mind that this came out of a citizen.
Well, I apologize, didn't mean
Yeah.
to direct it at staff. I just don't know why we're doing this.
I would say I mean, they identified 8 properties. And, although this is small, when you put it together with the other 7, or how many are out there, obviously there's significance in that. I don't necessarily agree with this whole cloth, but I understand the direction that the focus group and those discussions have headed in. It makes sense to me. I wish it could be more palatable to the people that live there.
When it's your home and your nest egg, having someone say, I wish it could be more palatable, then make it so. Let's make it so. These are their homes. These are tax-paying citizens. They should be the ones who decide, and dividing them up by dangling this commercial thing is just, we have one property that maybe we want to deal with, then let's just deal with that and recognize that in Lake Country, things are complicated. And just work with what is in front of us.
But by approving this, we do get to deal with each one individually.
No,
in this case, we're dealing with this one, they'll be dealing with this one that's requested it, and then every other proposal will also have to go through the process of being reviewed.
But
To Wayne's point, if your neighbor goes commercial and your neighbor on the left goes,
but they would
aren't you kind of, the writing's on the wall that this neighborhood
Would you
is
be
changing?
comfortable with that in your neighborhood?
Let me interject there. So there's various sequences of events that could happen, right? It's difficult to predict what they might be, but it could be a resident. I'll just briefly go over them, right? Because I just don't think we got the perspective necessarily. It could be residential now. They could decide to sell it. Somebody could buy it and keep it residential, right? That could happen. Somebody could keep it residential, never sell it, and pass away in the house, and then it gets sold, and then we go through the possibility of it keeping it residential or convert.
Mayor, we're not allowed to speak right now.
He's not supposed to, you're right.
If you're going to speak, you're supposed to step down as the presiding officer.
There's no motion on the table right now. So the determination was that once there's a motion on the table, then the mayor would have to vacate the chair. There is no motion on the table.
So then the other idea is that if somebody does want to make it a low-intensity home office type of use, it has to go through the steps that Amy talked to, and it has to meet the things that she talked about with, getting the zoning changed and making sure it's compatible with the neighborhood. It wouldn't just automatically become commercial. It has to go through those steps. There would be notice. I'm just trying to make sure
No,
that.
and I appreciate that, and I understand that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if my neighbor to the south turns commercial, even, very low intensity, limited use, and my neighbor on the other side, it's a de facto change in the character of my neighborhood.
If it was such a good idea, wouldn't we have a room full of supporters? Why, if it's so non-impacting and it's no big deal, because everybody has freedom to make the decision, why is everyone so upset and unhappy and here vocally to a person not supporting it? And we're supposed to be saying, it's good for you.
Because they don't want it, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, then why are we doing it?
We're about to vote on it. Okay, so let me just wait. So I've been, I had the several meetings in the Plan Commission going into this, right? So I was very eager to hear how everything played out. All the discussion we're having here, we had at the Plan Commission. All these things, the similar things. And I was, when the motion was made to advance this resolution to us here, I said that there's two votes in this process. One of them is from the Plan Commission, and one of them is from the council. I voted in favor of it in the Plan Commission because I think it's a good plan. Okay, our council, I'm very willing to wear a different hat here because this isn't just a plan. Every one of those people is a resident, right? And I've thought about the same thing. Probably not believed by some of the people I've corresponded with, but I completely understand the threat that this poses to some people, and I can talk all day about the fact that this is an expansion of your capability to exploit the property that you own, okay? Because the way this is written, it is extremely stringent criteria to go through a process to get approved to change the use from residential to anything else. Where in the lot you'd put your house, like where you'd put the new building, how many employees you could have, what type of business it is, what color. You'd have more control over somebody redeveloping the property next to you as commercial as you would if they built a new house with this change.
Then why do they not support it? Why
they
is
don't want
it so
it. I'm just saying
innocuous?
that there's two different votes. We're not voting on necessarily a good plan. We're voting on what's in the best interest of everybody that we're supposed to be representing right now.
Well, these are my constituents.
I got you. No, so I don't know if I'm making any sense about this, or maybe it sounds illogical, but it's sort of like I don't know, like a battle plan saying we can win this war, and realizing, well, we're going to lose too many good people and we're not going to fight it. You know, like you can say we're going to win, and you can tell the general to go take a hike. We're not going to. I'm just saying that this, from a planning perspective, with what little experience I've had on the Plan Commission, this makes more sense than just putting a dental office on the corner and not exploring all of these other possibilities for the properties in between. This is very, very similar to the properties if you go from Fireman's Park on Milwaukee Street to downtown. You've got you've got the Clearview nursing home or whatever, assisted living, and then you've got 4 or 5 houses. Then you've got a house in the corner. Then you've got a detailing shop. I mean, there was a house that was lifted up and moved that was in there. Some of those houses are brand new refurbished houses, and there's a business in the middle of them, and it's sprinkled about. It's a transition. This is very similar geography and that, but they don't want to do it, so I don't know why we would. You know, so.
I don't know why we want to do it to people who don't want it, period. I don't understand why.
What new information did you get here, Jackie, that since the focus group, when this was something you supported with that group?
I did not support this at all. Not this. I did not
My
like it at all.
recollection is that you supported it.
No, I'm pretty sure I did not. I know I spoke against it strongly because of Cushing Elementary. But it doesn't matter. Right now, I can tell you that every single homeowner doesn't support it. These are my constituents, and I'm in
I understand
accord
that. That's why I just asked you what new information that you got. I was just asking a question.
I didn't understand the question.
So what recommendations would we need to send back to the Planning Commission to move forward with allowing the dental office to move forward and not the others?
I think you could recommend, well, for one, let's not forget about the cemetery. You could recommend that the Plan Commission bring forward the land use plan change for the cemetery, because it's part of this ordinance, so that'll need to get sent back to. And that you recommend that the Plan Commission consider modifying the boundary of the land use change to include the southernmost boundary proposed to be modified to central business. I don't know if you want to discuss on exactly what category you want the Plan Commission to consider as part of that, whether it be central business and I don't have it in front of me, I apologize. Is the other land use plan category commercial? Just
Yeah.
commercial business?
Yep.
Do
I mean, they could just leave it
we need to
open-ended
be
for the Plan
specific? Yeah,
Commission to
do we need to be
recommend, right?
specific? Can we just
You
say?
could take it back to only
Okay.
to consider that property alone, and that is one tax key.
So I'd like to do that. I'd like to make a motion to, as you suggested, to recommend those suggestions to the Planning Commission. Do you need more specifics, Molly?
You mean to send it back?
Yeah, to make those recommendations that she just said, to send it back to the Planning Commission, that our recommendations would be to
Address
make
this
to
property
make
alone.
find a way to allow the process for the cemetery and the dental office, and to keep the remaining properties.
I'll
the same.
second
I'll
that.
second that.
Okay, is there any other discussion? And who did you decide got the second?
You can give it to
Jackie.
Tim.
Jackie
It's fine.
was here first. So I just want to confirm, so what I have here is to keep
It doesn't need to be specific, just that those recommendations that
to
they.
keep the land use plan for the or the changes to the land use plan for the cemetery, and then review the change for the southernmost property and keep the rest as they stand. Okay.
All right.
So just real quickly, logistically, then, Amy, this will go back to Plan Commission. They'd make a new recommendation that'll come back to council for a new public hearing, right?
I believe so. So I know some of the public is here. I have not prepared the agenda for the May 25th. Is it May 25th Plan Commission meeting? So I'll put it on the agenda for adoption of a resolution at that meeting. And then I will double check with our attorney, but I believe we'll have to schedule a new public hearing, which will be a 30-day notice for common council.
And we don't have the ability to separate it's just as it is, as it was sent to us, is a yes or no. We don't have the ability
Correct.
to make changes to it. Okay.
You accept or decline as is.
The decision seems, for the dental office, seems like a fairly simple one. But as soon as you have people's homes there, it complicates it.
I will check with the city attorney. It's possible we don't need to schedule a new public hearing because you're not changing the request, you're reducing it. So I feel like it's very possible that a new, the people who are made aware of this meeting, nothing, other than a reduction is being made in the request.
It'd be just to clarify, is it everything but the southernmost property or the southernmost two properties? They have the same owner, correct?
The vacant lot.
I mean, is there any resistance? I guess that would be something that would be open to discussion at the Plan Commission if there was.
Well, the property owner indicated they intend to keep that as a residential property, and that would provide a residential buffer between the dental.
But
just asking.
All right, yes, the property owner is asking, that property owner would like both of those properties to be?
I mean, my knowledge is I know they're separate, but I don't know,
We'll have to take that up, we'll have to take that up with the planning commission.
Those ones then?
We can't have
They are
conversations.
two separate lots that would need to be looked at.
Then I'd like to include both of those properties in the record, in
So
that
the
then.
motion's been changed.
Yeah, can I motion to change that to
amend your
include
motion.
both of those properties?
And is
I
the second
second.
in occurrence with that?
I'll second.
Well, we have.
We had a motion on the table.
Henry and Valdy to second.
Yes.
So,
I'll second the amended.
Okay, to include both properties?
Yeah.
Okay,
A little cleaner.
Yeah.
that's all right.
It's all right. It's a messy process, democracy.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, we will move on. Yes, thank you, Amy.
Okay, so on to the next item on our agenda is Seatman Properties for near Hawthorne Farm property. So this is another phase. You've seen this before. This was initially a piece of property just to the west of St. Joan of Arc Church that was approved with a conceptual plan with, I think, 12 two-unit, it's in here, 12 two-unit buildings, and it's been changed to be single-family homes, and this was approved or recommended for approval by the Plan Commission. So I guess you're probably better at explaining it than I am, so why don't you go ahead and explain? Yeah, go ahead and explain.
I'm John Seatman from Seatman Realty. Address is West 240 North 1221 Pewaukee Road, Waukesha, Wisconsin 53188. I am here with my trusty assistant, Chris, of course. But to give you an idea what was...
Uh-oh.
We'll get this put back together. This was the original proposal. We have Neshota Road that bisects the two sections that we've been currently working on. And we call this Area 2 to the northwest. And then there's Area 4, which is also known as the Knopf property. And we did the 22 lots in the first phase of Hawthorne Farm. And originally we had proposed the additional 24 condominium units on the southwest corner, which we have now converted to single family. And you'll see that the density in your pack, you'll see an exhibit where we shifted the density that was once part of the southern part to this northwestern area. This can be an additional 12 lots, or if we use the density from Area 4, that could make an additional 4 lots, so a total of 16 lots could be constructed on that side. So this is the proposal before you. You've got the 13 single-family lots. We have a series of of trails. We've got private paths around the sort of interior area, and then a public path that connects to our Hawthorne Farm original addition, down here to the south and west, all the way down to Red Chapel Court, with a loop around the stormwater pond. If you remember, there was a 4-acre piece that was dedicated to the city back in the time of the first plat, and when that was created, it was intended that could be used for stormwater as well as some public facilities. So we've included the park, the trails, as well as a small shelter on the corner that would be intended for, I guess, picnics or people stopping on the loop around the lakes or what have you. All of this shares the common area with the original phase, so it really acts as one subdivision. This is simply an addition to that. So they share all of the same amenities, the private paths, and you get some economies of scale, of course, with the maintenance of the open space by having more cared for by more people. Anything else? I think that covered it all.
Yeah, it was enthusiastically supported by the Plan Commission. That's really all I have to say. And the work has been done on the property to the north. A lot of the grading is all done, and they're putting in homes, and they've been good so far. Been good neighbors to everyone around them. As far all the reports got back to me, anyways.
Don't faint, but I love this stuff.
Yeah, they're nice. But I'll make a motion to approve the amendment to the conditional use permit for this planned use development on this site.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to defer you to the last Plan Commission minutes for any other reports from the Plan Commission, and we've got another meeting at the last Wednesday of the month. And that's it for Plan Commission.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. All righty, we'll move on to C1, Lake Welfare Committee. Mr. Price.
Yes, my first report.
All right.
The Lake Welfare met last Wednesday. The primary portion of the meeting was to the election of officers for the upcoming year. Mike Hausman was retained as Lake Welfare Committee Chair, and Gail Gaborski as Vice Chair. And the designation to the Plan Commission will be Mike Hausman this year. We had an in-depth report by an individual from SEH showing a map of the city where various contaminants were coming into the lake or areas of the city. And it was very interesting because it shows where the contaminants coming in and then how it was filtered and then what the net amount was. So, and it was highlighted between red, yellow, and green. So what the committee is going to do is try and come up with a game plan to go after the red areas to try and get those dropping down to reduce the contaminants coming into the lake shelter. The last area we talked about was the questions whether the goose oiling was going to be done by FDA yet, and that has been done. There's been some couple of small families of geese that have been noticed, but nothing real big.
I got 15 changes. By me.
Yeah, they all seem to go to your house. But if there's was it 26, I think it's got to get to, then the Food and Drug will come out and do a goose roundup again. But we won't know that for probably two or 3 weeks. So the rest is in the agenda, or the minutes.
Sounds good. Good first report. Okay, we'll move on to D, Park and Rec. Mark.
Thank you. We appointed Mike Burns as our chair again, and also David Brabson as chair of Tree Board. And we're looking at some erosion situations, potential repair for the parking lot adjacent, the area adjacent to the parking lot at Cushing Park, and also the paddleboard launch that Clearwater uses, some erosion situation there. And we've got some quotes of to repair and mitigate that we're reviewing. Also, I want to mention Free Fishing Day for Kids is May 21st to Fish Hatchery Pond. It'll be well stocked and ready to go. Dick's Bait Shop will be there too to help out the kids. So
It's always a well-attended, fun event.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's it for Park and Rec.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Good first report. Okay, we'll move on to E, Public Works. Mr. Grimmer.
Public Works had their meeting on May 4th, acted on the Nagawicca Heights engineering plans and forwarded those on with just a little housekeeping. They made a recommendation to council to include in their capital spending extending the Genesee Street path to Carriage Hills, but also strongly suggested seeking grant funding to further extend that path up to Copperfield. And then lastly, actually that's it. Next meeting is June 1st.
And specifically for that path to be 10 feet wide.
10 feet wide for bikes.
That's on, see?
Yep.
And to qualify for grant funding, it has to be a minimum of 10 feet.
Yeah, let's do it.
Everybody wins.
All right, thank you very much. Good first report for Public Works. I almost called your name for Park and Rec.
I know. Times are changing.
Okay, F. Delahart, Mr. Eicher.
We have a meeting a week from tomorrow, and we'll be voting on our new officers for the next year and get updates on our new plant upgrade, which has been going on. So things are working smoothly at Delahart.
Sounds good. Police Commission, Jackie, do you have a meeting? No? Okay, Library Board, Danielle.
We meet tomorrow, so no report.
No meeting?
No meeting, no.
Okay. Okay, Zoning Board of Appeals, Jackie, I assume no report for that one?
You assume correctly, I don't have any committees that meet regularly, Kent.
Okay. J, Promotion and Tourism Committee, Mark again.
We are in final proofing of the visitor guide. That should be going to print next week, so we're pumped up about that. It's been a while, and this is a significant update. In addition to printing, we're putting a lot of effort into digital availability of that as well through various channels. Now that is getting wrapped up, we're going to tackle the trail map and get that updated. That's due. And our city banners or visitor banners, Hike Delafield, Sail Delafield, Bike Delafield, Ski Delafield, Dine and Shop Delafield. These have been delivered to DPW, and I believe they'll be starting to putting them up next week downtown and the Highway 83 shopping district. So.
Great, those will be nice.
Yeah, it's a nice little feature if anybody wants to see that. We're real happy with that. And that's it for promotion.
Thank you very much. Okay, Lake Country Fire and Rescue Commission, any meeting, Mr. Grimmer?
Board?
Board, I'm sorry, yep.
Yes, we had a meeting. Couple things I'll just draw the council's attention to. Our seasonal volumes for the first quarter were thin, which is seasonal, to be expected. But revenues are slightly thin, but things usually pick up as people get back from Florida and summer activity and maybe a little bit more reckless activity occurs. So things should get busier as we move along. Additional leadership training was allocated from funds from the fund balance, about $15,000 if I recall, to fill the need of some officers who would benefit from that training. I would draw the council's attention to Western Lakes. referendum while it's not officially approved. It does sound like there will be an August referendum. I've mentioned this before, but that's a $6 million referendum, essentially doubling their operating budget to have a fully staffed Western Lakes Fire Department. On a personal note, I think it's unfortunate that they would have an August referendum when voter turnout is thin at best. But staffing challenges do continue to be a challenge across departments throughout the state. And then finally, our next meeting is Wednesday, May 18th, this Wednesday, 5 p.m.
Sounds good. Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to M, other committees. Deer Management Committee, and I see we have the chairman here. Would you like to come on up? Give your name and address. But Danielle, the floor is yours, unless you two manage it however you planned on doing it.
Jacob Berg, 2117 Hillcrest Drive, and I'm currently the vice chair as of last meeting. So, but I'm here on behalf of the committee, and Danielle, I don't know if you wanted to kick it off.
Yeah, I can just give a
Help
recap
field
of
questions and inject some points.
Yeah, we had quite a bit on our last meeting agenda. One of the big ones was we did finally get clarification on the tree stands for our hunting season, for our hunting program. And it was clarified that we are not restricted. It does not apply to bow hunting. So we are able to put all of our tree stands back into operation next season. So we're hoping to have a better season next year to get those stands back up and running. So, and then we have a couple of things on the agenda today for discussion. Did you have anything else you wanted to add
Sure.
before we go into the other stuff?
No, you laid that out really well. I just have a few, I guess, statistics and points to help fuel the next point of conversation. And ultimately, what we're coming to recommend is to decrease the distance allowable to hunt a crossbow or a bow and arrow from 100 yards to 50 yards from a building. And also to take out the written explicit consent, and this is in reference to section 34-20 G2 and A. So that is what we're looking to do. So just a little background. Ethical range on bow hunting is 50 yards at best. And tree stands on average are about 15 to 20 yards, 15 to 20 feet high up into a tree. So you're adding heights, and that is a regulation and a statute that needs to occur when hunting, is hunting from an elevated platform. So again, we're shooting the arrow down, and we'd like to see that 100 to 50 yards decrease to 50 yards. So that's...
Yeah, so just to clarify, so Wisconsin statute does not put any restrictions on the distance. This was something that, but they allow for cities to
up to 100.
Up to 100. They allow for cities to do that based on safety or other concerns if they have them individually. But it is not. It is a city on a city level, not on a state level, and that's up to us. So I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this city of Delafield adopted it based on just kind of adopting, or was it Brookfield?
Yes,
we just
and so she's referencing the 2013 Wisconsin Act 71, and it lays out 100 yards. It lists 100 yards in there as a maximum distance to hunt from a building. And so we have the ability to go down to 0 if we really wanted to, but we don't feel that that's necessary.
Yeah.
We feel that 50 yards is a comfortable compromise.
The struggle that we're running into is that there's just not that many properties, and we're struggling to find enough places to be able to, that fit, even if people want to be able to hunt and we can't find the locations for it because of the current statutes. So this would be still requiring, these are people willing to hunt on their own property, and it just is the distance to like a neighboring home without permission.
And you're pursuing this because the call was low last year?
It was, yeah. And the deer just continue to increase. So we're running into a lot of challenges. We're trying to increase our ability to hunt within the city.
I'm not a hunter, but go ahead, Paul.
I
Sorry.
just have a question. With your permit, is that only during normal deer season, that 10-day deer season, or is that other parts of the year you can also hunt?
So it's just strictly through the bow season.
Just through the bow season? Well, the bow season,
Bow
what,
season's
6
long.
weeks?
Yeah, bow season's long, yeah.
That's much longer. Yeah. So have you talked with the people who own the new home that was the Selden home on where the Bark River Bridge hits Nagelwicker Road? Because they own that strip along the river. That's not part of the subdivision there. And there's 8 to 10 deer that are there all the time. They love to hang out there, then they go up and down, then they come up to our house up the street. But if you could get a deer standing there, you could have a huge impact.
Okay, if we're going to do this,
Yeah,
now
yeah.
I got a spot for you guys.
But talk to them. So to be clear, are you suggesting that we change the distance that we're permitted to hunt on your own property from a neighboring property structure from 100 yards to 50 yards, and that would be citywide for anybody?
Correct.
Yes.
And you would get
With verbal consent, not explicit.
Well, you don't need their consent if you're on your own property.
You do.
No, if you're on your own
You
property,
consent if you're less than the 50 yards.
Correct.
no, I'm saying
Right now, yeah.
I'm just saying if you're on your own property and you're 50 yards, like right now, if you're on your own property and you're 100 yards away from their structure and you're shooting it on your own land, you're good. You're suggesting to move that to 50.
50. Yep.
Okay, so the point of emphasis needs to be making sure you have permission to track that deer if it's wounded onto their property.
Yep.
So that you're aware that, I mean, there's a lot of good shots around, there's a lot of people that aren't as good as others.
Got that right.
I'm all for it, I'm just letting you know that.
I'd be a little concerned about not having written permission.
Mark, can you bring that mic up a little bit?
I'd be a little concerned about not having written permission.
Okay.
Does that open the door for disagreement after the fact?
Isn't oral permission legally binding?
Well,
I don't know if you
unfortunately,
can prove it.
I've
If you
been
can
on
prove
this
it.
council long enough, and it makes me sad to say so, that I remember this conversation from many years ago where, well, I shouldn't say I remember it because I don't remember it in its entirety, but we did have the debate about oral versus written and the ramifications relative to legal liability. And someone says, yes, I did allow that, but, and then after the fact, we could have issues. Is it, I mean, is this a hill that you guys want to die on, or?
I mean, the 50 yards would be more important than the written versus oral, consent, but.
I think that's
Are
probably.
we getting
I think
written consent at this time?
that it is a requirement at this time.
And
yes.
we're getting it,
If
as far as we know.
Well,
yeah, if the hunters are required to get it. So
So let me chime in that when it was here before, the police department chimed in at that time and indicated that they had a strong preference of requiring written consent, so that if they ever had to respond to any property owner issues with hunting or something, that they would have something to go by. I talked to Chief Keel on Friday. He still feels the same way. However, when I asked him, has there been any incidents at all that you've had to respond to regarding property owner rights and approval, he said not to his recollection.
How much of a burden is this then to get written versus?
My understanding is that there are property owners out there that are willing to give verbal permission, but become uneasy when asked to give it in writing because they tend to think that they're more legally liable at that point.
Oh.
Hunters are generally pretty off the grid, shall we say, right?
Well, I know, I was, and I was following Keel's lead too, where we agreed. I was one of the big advocates for the written permission. If there's not been any complaints, I mean, I'd be amenable to setting that. I'm only one person out of 7, but setting that aside if we respond, if there was. I mean,
Yeah,
we'd be waiting for an issue to arise and respond to the issue as opposed to trying to prevent an issue that we don't have.
I said to Eric, how would you feel if the council changed it? And then if it became a problem, we could always change it back. And he's like, well, I guess you could do that.
I'm not a fan, but whatever. I understand. As soon as you get written permission, especially with the homeowners association, nobody wants to sign it.
Is there a goal for, I mean, I remember a time during the early days of the deer committee that we were culling greater than 100 deer. Is there a goal in mind? Is 100 enough?
Yeah, we need to take another census of our population. Since 2019, I don't know that it's really moved all that much. The deer are continually a problem. I mean, every year they're still in the city. We have folks reaching out to us via email, via phone, and saying, hey, I got 8 deer running through my yard. What are you guys going to do about it? So this would help increase the numbers, the harvest numbers year over year. This is a way to do it.
Well, Wayne, I know when you were running deer management, in the early days, I know they had good success with the number of deer. So I'm just thinking like about the permit. I like the idea of making the 50-yard thing, but did you find the written permit problematic, or was it?
Me as a hunter, yes. And again, I know Tom's going to disagree, but I still believe we're in violation of the state law by requiring express written consent, because the DNR attorney has told me that we can't require that. Now, I know our attorney said we could for safety, but the DNR has told me no, even though other municipalities have that express written consent, nobody's challenged them. And if somebody did, the DNR attorney says we'd lose that. According to Dick Roberts, the warden, we don't need it.
And Wayne, that same warden told me it's a gray area, and it's hasn't been.
And that's why I went and talked to the attorney for the DNR.
Right.
And the DNR says nobody's really pushed us on it, but if somebody wanted to push us on
nobody's
it.
going to know until someone contests it and take it to court.
Okay, so but our deer management people are proposing this, right? And it was proposed or agreed on by your committee, right?
Yes.
And that's why you're here, right?
Yes.
So if you think it's actually legal, then why don't you just go along with the recommendation?
Sounds like a motion.
Sounds like
Should
a
I
motion.
make a motion?
Go ahead. I will make the motion that we approve the changes to our ordinance. I'm going to say this wrong.
You could just say recommendation to approve ordinance 795 is written.
Yes, that.
And I'll
I'll second it.
I think Jackie won again.
See, she's just close to the sound travels.
Now, so a question on that, does that include any changes to there was a deer and wildlife, is that a separate?
That's a separate one.
Okay,
That's a
okay.
separate one. So the only
That's why
other
I
thing I
asked.
wanted to note on
Well,
here
okay.
is that we were changing the language of the building to home dwelling. And I wanted to clarify that,
It should be, right.
that we just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yep, okay.
And even in statutes, building is defined as
That's what we
something
thought.
intended for human occupancy.
That's what we thought, and that's how we interpret it, but we wanted to make sure it was very clear for everyone. So,
Who gets oral consent permission?
What's
The
that?
hunter?
The
Or
hunter
the
would-
committee?
no,
gathers?
the hunter
The
would
hunter
go
gets
to
permission
a-
and-
yes, would go to.
Yeah, we don't
a-
get involved. They just have to have it if they need to prove that they have the right to be there.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Item number 2.
So the second, where did I put? Item number 2 is we had a couple of times it has come up where specifically for turkey hunting within the city, requests from the farmers and from residents who have been attacked by turkeys in our neighborhood, that the turkeys have been a problem. And as a deer management committee, we do not have the authority to even discuss it. So we felt like it would be appropriate to expand, well, actually twofold, because the deer management is set to expire next year. And so we wanted to discuss that, whether either extending that or making it a permanent commission. We're recommending that we make it a permanent commission and expand it from solely deer management to hunting and wildlife as well, so that there is a place for people to address issues such as turkey hunting.
But leaving waterfowl with you and Lake Welfare Committee.
Yes, and we did specifically address that was waterfowl would still be with Lake Welfare.
You're going to get everything.
If people want to
I've
come
got a
talk
ground
to
squirrel
us.
problem, you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
But
This is mission creep here.
I mean, you are going to get there's everyone's catching coyotes on their Ring cameras and they think it's a problem, like they've never been here. But you're going to get it all, just so you're aware, which is good.
Yeah, but I think there should be a place for that.
Yep,
There should
agreed.
be, I'd rather that be coming to a permanent commission than bringing it to the council. So I think this would be a place for people to bring issues like that. And
So
if we can address it, then we will. If we can't, then
Yeah, as
it
long
is-
as it's not just how to shoot them or kill them.
No, it's not. It's specifically nuisance things. I mean, the turkey issue that has come up a couple of times. And
I got you.
I know that turkey.
Should you add wording to that, management? Wildlife
Yeah, I mean, we
management
can
or
call
something
it
that
whatever. I mean, we can
implies-
call it wildlife, deer and wildlife management versus hunting.
Rather
I mean,
than
if we'd
Do you
rather
have a
call it
mission
that.
statement that goes along with the name change?
Well, we had talked about that. So if this gets approved tonight, then we will be redoing all of the deer, the entire, we'll be redoing that at our next meeting and bringing that back for approval here at the next one.
I think it's a natural evolution.
I wouldn't support any more money, by the way,
And
with the name
that's
change.
not the intention. No, the intention is just, and deer management would still be the primary focus. Would still be really the primary focus. We wouldn't be going to look for additional issues. It's a place that people can go, and that we would be allowed to address it.
Who would have the authority to decide what animals we're going to manage?
Well, it would, essentially, whatever we thought we could handle. As the deer management, we would, if we have the authority to do it, then we would look into it. If
And
we
who would
don't-
define what's a nuisance?
Yeah, I think there needs to be a little bit more thought to it, because I get concerned because some people want to hunt like sandhills, and
They're
I would
delicious.
have issues with that.
What I was getting at is the committees are typically advisory, and I would suggest that it would make sense to have something in how this is written up where the council has the approval on what wildlife this committee manages. So if someone comes to you and says, I want to take care of turkeys, you would make a recommendation to the council to add turkeys, indicate whether there would be any budget required for it or whatnot, and get the council to
Oh, absolutely.
add turkeys.
Yeah, I believe
make
that is
sense?
the intention.
That sounds like a good
like
idea.
that.
Yeah.
So before we vote on any motion, that's what I'd like to see, is more written documentation as to what your mission, what you're trying to accomplish, something that we can vote on, as opposed to just voting now to change this to a hunting and wildlife commission.
No, I think the intention for tonight was just to give direction to move forward with making some proposed changes to bring back here as an ordinance.
That's fine.
Sounds like a great idea.
Sounds like
Yeah.
what Wayne said.
They make it clear that it's, that you're not the wildlife rescue either.
So I'm not sure, but I would like to make a motion to reestablish the commission as a permanent commission, and we can call deer and wildlife management.
Second.
I'm not going to vote yes for that. I want to see more information
need
before I vote on that.
More of a
Not
definition
saying-
of what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just come back to the
A bit of a
scope.
mission statement around that. Is that reasonable to? expect before we?
Change the committee, all the committee verbiage first, and then approve it all at once, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Well, we have a motion and a second,
so
so
it's
we
a-
have to either vote on it or we have to remove the motion from the floor.
She owns the motion until it's voted on, so she can pull her
Right.
motion if she
Right,
wishes.
that's why I said she needs to be voted on.
Just
or
vote it
removed.
down. Just vote yes or no, and we'll go. Right?
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Abstentions? Passes. So maybe you
So
might,
no
No, it did
or
not.
fails.
We like it, just do it.
Motion failed.
So you might, maybe you want to make a motion, maybe, I'm throwing it out there, to just make it a permanent committee and leave the name as the Deer Management Committee, and then you can change it next time.
Okay, so can
No,
I
we're
make?
not approving that either tonight.
Oh, we're not?
No, it needs to be in the form of an ordinance. There's no written ordinance here to
Okay.
be adopted.
Okay.
The intention was to just, for the council to give a vote of support that, that you would consider the changes that they're talking about so that they know to move forward with proposing something.
We're all
Okay.
nodding our
you-
heads.
Yeah,
We're all
I
saying,
think you
yeah,
provided
do
that
it.
direction.
Do it, you're good.
In
But we all
principle.
just voted no to
We
that?
voted on the proposed,
On
We
a,
voted against an open
Okay,
check, a
so
blank
I would
check.
like to make a motion to approve allowing the Deer Management to come up with a proposal for a permanent commission
By a
with the
different-
intention of deer and wildlife management.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion?
It's a motion for proposal, we'll go for it.
Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes.
bada bing, bada boom.
I think we like it.
So that was all in favor
Right,
for that
okay.
one?
It's easy anymore.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank you for all the hard work. Okay, number 9, unfinished business, mayor's report. 10A, discussion and possible action on the following items. Number 1, accept resignation of Susan Buchanan for Delahart Commission.
I'll move to accept Susan Buchanan's resignation.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Accept resignation of Tracy Mern from the Board of Review.
Move to accept Tracy Mern's resignation from Board Review.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Accept resignation of Dwayne Rutherford from the Promotion and Tourism Commission.
Move to accept Dwayne Rutherford's resignation from Promotion and Tourism.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Appointment of Jim Barron to Promotion and Tourism Commission to the citizen member position vacated by Rutherford, term to expire 4/2023.
Move to approve?
Second.
Wait, who had that second?
Second.
Okay.
All in
Sorry, I'm
favor-
getting to know your voice.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay. New business, 11A. Review of city code regarding the roles and conduct of different participants at the city council meeting. And I just figured out this isn't for action or anything tonight, just apparently open discussion.
Yeah, this is kind of a continuation of the discussions that we've had regarding, in the past, it's been the role of the presiding officer at the Common Council. And Alderman Eicher asked for this to be put on as kind of a general discussion, especially in light of the fact that we've got a couple new aldermen on the council, to just talk about the roles and conduct of the participants in the city council. And I think that more than anything, what we want to point out is that the rules as far as the city code that govern the common council are contained in Chapter 2, Article 3 of the municipal code. That is in your packet, I think starting at about page 114 or 15, I think. Let me see here. I don't know, before that. $104. And so within that article, it goes over the makeup of the city council, talks about the meetings, talks about the scheduling of the regular meetings, talks about special meetings and who can call for them and what they need to do to go about that, talks about adjournments of meetings. Then we recently had the section that we added regarding the governance of virtual meetings post-COVID. Gets into the presiding officer and what we've talked about in the past with their duties and responsibilities. Talks about a quorum, and it's got some interesting components about how if we don't have a quorum present, the clerk can command that a police officer go find those missing council members and bring them here to have a quorum.
Down at the local watering hole.
Goes through the order of business on our standard agenda. Talks about clerk pro tem in case there's an absence of the city clerk. Talks about the mayor to conduct the meeting, who the president to conduct in the absence of the mayor. The conduct of deliberations is pretty interesting as far as who can do what as far as during the meeting. Same with consideration of matters before the council. So it is an interesting read, and I would encourage you all to read through that. And I also included some applicable sections from the most recent edition of Robert's Rules. That goes over some of the responsibilities for the council and specifically talks about how a board with less than 12 members is identified as a small board, and that there are some special provisions that allow them to operate more informally than larger boards. But when you read through this stuff, you know, it becomes evident that what we've been doing for decades, you could identify things that we've been doing wrong. Like right now, anytime somebody wants the floor and wants to be able to speak, they're supposed to raise their hand and keep their hand raised until the mayor recognizes them. Also for small groups, it says motions don't even need a second. But I think the point of emphasis
Well, clarification on that though. If somebody makes a motion and then nobody makes a second, but somebody starts to talk, that is considered somebody willing to discuss this topic, so it's considered a second.
Correct.
So no, there doesn't require a second, but it does require somebody to talk on the subject.
Yeah, I mean specifically in here it says motions need not be seconded.
But if you go further, that's why. If you go further in the Robert's Rules of Order, that's how it's explained, is that if somebody starts to talk on it, that means somebody's interested in debating the subject.
It's a de facto second.
Correct.
Anyways, it also does talk about how for small groups that informal discussion of subject is permitted while no motion is pending. That kind of supports the opinion we received from our city attorney that the presiding officer may participate in discussion without vacating the chair prior to a motion being made. So I think that gives you some good material to identify what the roles and responsibilities are. I don't know if there's any questions tonight that we can have for follow-up, or if after people do have an opportunity to read through these, if you have more questions, we can certainly discuss it again, or we can follow up with our city attorney as needed to identify things. But I think real important is everyone associated with the city you know, has learned what we do based on our time here. I've been here for a couple of decades now, and I started learning right away how we conduct business by being here and observing. I can tell you that there are municipalities that are a lot more formal than us. That's typically larger municipalities, and there are municipalities that are significantly less formal than we are. You look at like a municipality like the Village of Neshota, it is extremely informal with how they conduct meetings. So with that being said, you know, we can look to follow Robert's Rules as closely as we want to. There is a statement in our municipal code that we are to follow Robert's Rules. We could soften that somewhat if we choose to, but that's really up to the council how you want to move forward and how strictly we want to dot our I's and cross our T's on Robert's Rules.
Well, I'll say thanks. I know it was a general consensus that we discuss this, but I asked for it to be on the agenda. And I know an issue was raised over when the presiding officer can speak based on our ordinance. And, you know, I noted that I had not seen that particular formality enforced as a, or not formality, the law enforced as such since I've been on the council. And so I was really looking for how we get away with doing that for so long without having it be an issue. And it's really because we're like what Tom mentioned, we're leveraging the fact that as a small board, there's some latitude where we're following Robert's rules, but we're not following all of Robert's rules. And frankly, enforcing that particular segment of the ordinance, I'm not sure what purpose it serves and why we have it. Because if you've seen it, setting aside the chair to someone else and taking it back, it's like Parliament. I mean, it's like, okay, well, I'm no longer the chair. I'm ceding the chair to the next presiding officer. Now I'd like to speak. Yes, you may speak. Then you speak. I mean, it would serve to make our meetings much longer, is what I just see. And I think there may be one or two other things in here that only serve that same purpose. And I think we should all take a look at it and maybe propose possible changes to our own ordinance so that we're not hung up on something that isn't enforced, or if it is something we think should be enforced, why, and make sure we do it, you know.
A long time ago, I asked you why you didn't run for mayor, and you said, because I get a vote on the Common Council. And I always love that answer. And so I think that's the one thing that we want to remember, is that the Common Council is the deliberative body and the mayor is the executive. And so as long as we follow that limit, there have been a couple of times, and it doesn't matter, where not just Kent, but other mayors have spoken when it's been up for a vote, and then they weigh in on an issue. And I get it, because you care. And, you know, but I think we want to make sure we just honor that piece. And I agree with you, Tim. I don't think it's necessary to vacate, and it isn't even required according to Robert's rules. But I think we just want to be careful when we have something up for a vote, and then we continue to discuss it. Because I always loved your answer, and made sense to me.
Well, so my intent was to bring this up so we've got a good point of reference, and then if we think there should be a change, suggest one, and we'll talk. You know, we'll make it something that we can act on at a future meeting if we think it serves a point.
I like that this is on the public record too, that it's just out there so people can see and read it and understand when they come. You know, that we can't talk at like citizen comment. We can't dialogue.
Yeah. Right. No. Anyway.
And if we can't have perfection, I'd rather see us get a little tense and passionate once in a while, rather than have the rules hamper a good free discussion. You know, if we get too formal, you know, then you don't have.
You mean we
sometimes you
can't
don't
wear
have the give
powdered
and
wigs?
take.
No powdered wigs.
Yeah, you feel like you're being overly formal rather than overly informative.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. All right. We will go on to B, discussion and possible action regarding resolution 2022-16, amendment to resolution number 2022-12, authorizing the issuance of sale of not to exceed $2,050,000 in general obligation promissory notes, series 2022A.
Yeah, so this is just an amendment to the resolution that you passed previously for the borrowing. Our bond counsel, who drafted the resolution, noted after the fact that there was an extremely minor Scrivener's error in the years for repayment. It's a 10-year repayment period, and they only had 9 years identified. They had repayment starting in 2024 when it should have been 2023, and this properly amends that.
I like the deferred payment myself. I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2022-16, the amendment to resolution 2022-12.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, who seconded? Is that you, Daniel?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Wait,
Aye.
roll call.
Oh, roll call.
Henry.
Sorry, I even wrote that down.
Aye. Schaefer.
Aye.
Valdey.
Aye.
Dean.
Aye.
Grimmer.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Iker.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. 11C, preliminary discussion and possible action regarding the utilization of additional city funds and labor resources for enhanced parade security measures.
Yeah, so this is just a preliminary discussion that I intend to bring back in June. We recently received the event packet from the American Legion for the 4th of July parade, and the fire chief is recommending significant security measures be put in place in light of what happened in the city of Waukesha at the Christmas parade. And we weren't able to get the security staff together for a meeting on Thursday or Friday after this came up before the meeting. We won't be able to get together until next week to formulate a plan. However, it is obvious that there will be some new and additional costs involved, and I just wanted to find out from the city, or find out from the council, what kind of costs are we willing to take on? I assume that those would be something that the city would cover and not pass on to the Legion. And to give you kind of an idea of what's being thought about, is the idea of bringing Public Works employees in on the 4th of July, it's a double time holiday, and having them move all the plow trucks and all the large equipment and use them to block off roads. Also, the police department is interested in having our Public Works department fabricate some anti-vehicle devices. If you've ever played marbles and jacks,
Yeah.
these anti-vehicle devices are like jacks, and they're about yay high. The front of the vehicle will clear over the top of it. However, then the vehicle will get into this thing and it'll actually lift the vehicle up. And they're talking about Public Works fabricating these to the tune of probably $3,000 or $4,000 of materials and probably $3,000 or $4,000 worth of Public Works staff time that, as we've talked about in the past, we don't have extra staff time to cover. So I just wanted to get some preliminary feedback from council on what your thought is on city resources. Are we okay if the security team is in support of doing something to the tune of $10,000 for the parade, or is that problematic?
It could be more than that though, right?
It could be, and I'm just throwing out numbers that were, I mean, if we bring in a few Public Works employees to move all the vehicles, I'm thinking that that's going to be $1,000, something like that. But the bigger cost would be the fabricating of these anti-vehicle devices. Those are probably somewhere in the round of $8,000, and even more concerning from my perspective is the opportunity cost of our employees are working on fabricating those when we should be out taking care of the parks and the lakes and the roads and whatnot.
So Tom, this wasn't brought forward prior to the Waukesha parade tragedy because the thought was it wasn't needed? Or, yeah.
I think the Waukesha incident has brought heightened awareness to parades in all communities. It's difficult though because when you talk about this, even if you block all the roads, one needs to simply go on the grass around these things and they're on the parade route.
Well, and you can, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Just real quickly, I just want to mention one other thing that we're talking about doing is leading the parade with two types of vehicles, maybe 2 police cars or something, and at the tail of the parade, 2 vehicles, maybe a plow truck and a fire tanker truck. And those vehicles would be on the lookout for someone approaching from the front or approaching from the back, and would be would have directions to cut them off or do what they could to stop the people. But it's still, I mean, it still doesn't preclude someone from entering the parade in the middle of the parade.
Does it stop someone from showing up with a firearm?
Right.
Does it stop? I mean, you can think of multiple ways where the public can be put in jeopardy, and there are there are things that we can, there's the big factors that we can mitigate. Obviously, we have police on site, and those help deter people from doing bad things, or first responders are on site. They help provide support and the emergency medical services that people need in a tragedy. But I think it is myopic, and I don't get to use that word too often, but
Ooh,
myopic.
I like it. Good vocab.
Thank you.
Good vocab.
To think that we can, that we should be addressing this specific threat when there are a vast cornucopia of other threats.
I like the prudence of some strategically placed vehicles. I mean, from just an off chance that we get some idiot that has hijacked a car and is fleeing Milwaukee. I mean, those types of incidents are common all over the place. We get them on 83 periodically with some guy. Or turns around. But I mean, I think that would make sense. I don't know where you'd put all those.
I don't like it.
All
sounds
these,
like make it look like a war zone here.
Yeah, I mean, I get there'd be some people that would feel much better about it, and some people would point out where we don't have them as opposed to.
Yeah.
But I think coming up with a nice strategic plan, like to put vehicles to block, because they're quick to put out, quick to put back away. Some people might think they're part of the parade.
Well, just real quickly, we don't have enough vehicles to block every intersection of the
Right.
parade route. And it is a reduced parade route even this year, because they're not starting from Muni lot with what's going on with Hendricks. They're going to be starting from the back of City Hall. But just one other thing to think about is, in the past, we've used the wooden barricades. And those wooden barricades can be taken down almost instantaneously, and the roads are back open almost instantaneously. To reduce costs, I was hoping to probably only bring in 2 or 3 public works employees. And so then when they have, 10 or 12 vehicles that they need to move back to public works, we're probably gonna, instead of shutting down the roads 20 minutes before the parade and having them open 20 minutes after the parade, it's probably more like shutting them down hour and a half to an hour before the parade, and an hour and a half after the parade, opening them back up.
But I like that. That's more common sense and more like a parade safety precaution thing, and less like we're preparing for World War III. I just don't like the idea of making those things. It reminds me of we're in the Ukraine.
Are you talking about the trucks?
I love the trucks.
Or the jacks.
Yeah, not the thingies.
The jacks.
Jacks. No.
Our police
That
police
scares
department
me.
actually made some wooden protocols of them.
Oh my God.
Okay.
I just think that's
overkill.
That's too much for, I mean, how many, you have thousands of parades throughout the state, probably millions nationwide. I just don't.
So that's really great feedback, and I appreciate it, and gives us the direction that we need.
So am I hearing basically we're sticking to some public works labor?
Yep.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of lead vehicles and trailing vehicles
I think
that
we
are
all like that one.
specifically for security.
Can we get
It's
our
not very obtrusive, but it's probably very, a lot of impact for.
And these are vehicles that are typically in the parade anyways.
Right.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Is it our turn to get the armored vehicle that we ponied up our share for the parade? I want to see that thing rolling down the
I think
street.
the town of Delafield has.
Whatever, just get us on the
deer
list.
snipers on the back.
No, we paid our share.
We did. I think we paid like $33,000
Yeah,
or
so
something.
we did a big urban assault vehicle. We now gotta get it out here.
Where is that? Waukesha County?
I think it's, yeah, it is New Berlin.
It was broken out
Send it
for
our way.
something, unfortunately.
Alrighty, we'll move on, folks. 11D, approval of vouchers, payables report.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, passes. Okay, report of city officials, city administrator.
Yeah, I just want to mention with the retirement of Mike O'Brien, we have made some organizational changes to fill that void, and we have promoted Sean Heinzel to Public Works Foreman. And you may recognize the name of who we hired for the Public Works Maintenance Worker position. It's Greg Lutke, the husband of former clerk Michelle Lutke. Greg had been working for us as a seasonal employee since August, and has received universal praise from all of the public works employees about his work ethic and how he's fit in with the team. And so we interviewed Greg and identified him as a perfect fit for us.
Yay.
Yep.
Sounds good. City Clerk.
Yep, so I mentioned earlier that we are in renewal period for the liquor licenses and the bartender's licenses, as well as the cigarette and tobacco licenses. We have about 2/3, maybe a little more of the liquor license applications, and I have been reviewing them. There have been a significant number of corrections that need to be addressed. It happened last year the same way, which is why we end up doing the bulk of the approvals in June. So look for those at that time. And then the assessment notices, the open book, and the board of review. Mayor Atwell, myself, and Administrator Hafner met with Cal Magnan, the city assessor, briefly a couple, not this past Friday, but the Friday before, just to kind of get a handle on the process and when we would expect for the residents to see their assessment notices. And I think we're expecting them to go out this week or next. We are expecting to have some phone calls and some questions about those. We are trying to get in front of those a little bit by providing some information in the assessment notices so that folks know how that number came to them, to try to kind of maybe soften the blow if there is a blow for these folks. And then open book starts June 6th. Cal has explained that his intention as the assessor here is to meet with as many folks as possible. We do expect there to be quite a few. It is a full revaluation this year, so everybody's going to see some kind of a change, one way or the other for their properties. We have open book scheduled through July at this point to try to lessen the number of individuals that we will have at the board of review with objections. So we're hopeful that, maybe we'll only have one day of actual board of review. That might be wishful thinking, but I think Cal has done a good job just in regular years from what I've seen here in that education part of it. So that is all for that. Any questions about either of those items?
I'm just going to add in there, one of the things that's actually going in the envelope that gets mailed with the reassessment numbers is a front and back document from the Taxpayers Alliance of Wisconsin, if I remember correctly. But it basically goes through a question and answer discussion to address a number of issues, but the one that I think is most prudent is if I go and survey 10 people in the city of Delafield, and I ask them that if their tax assessment goes up, do you think the city of Delafield gets more money for its budget, the same or less? 8 out of 10 for sure will tell me that the city gets more money. Well, as we all know, the city doesn't get any more or less money. Tom has a wonderful explanation with numerator and denominator, but this should be a soft sell. Hopefully people will understand it. So you will get fewer phone calls, we will get fewer phone calls, and we're basically just educating the folks as to what the facts are. So we're hoping that that helps people understand the process better.
I don't just want the final thing, I didn't mention the specific date, but we do have the initial board of review meeting scheduled for June 1st, but because the assessment roll will not be completed, we will basically just be meeting to adjourn to a later date. That date where we have our full board of review meeting, the first meeting of 2 hours, is August 23rd.
Great, thank you very much. City Treasurer, April 2022 Treasurer's Reports in the packet. D, council requests for future agenda items.
I actually have a couple requests. One is to discuss and maybe possibly act on the idea of separating public hearings from the votes. So we have a separate public hearing. If we can talk about that idea. And then my second, you ready for it? My second request is I'd like to understand how committee assignments are made, including rationale for movement and removal, despite requests to contrary. Because I'm curious, I've seen it not just with myself, but with other members of different committees over the last decade, but particularly in the last few years. So I'd like to understand how and why people are moved around, and because we are often asking for folks to be on committees, but I have witnessed people being removed without knowledge or reason. So I'd just like to understand. So I think the folks in the city would like to know too.
I have a request to have a discussion in either next month or the following month, depending on what's on the agenda. Have a discussion on the effect of traffic and noise on the ambiance of the downtown area, the destruction of our streets, destruction of our nice brick sidewalks. It was brought up by almost everybody here today. They're concerned about the tremendous amount of traffic we have. I think there's some issues we can talk about that might improve that. So I've got some ideas I can start the discussion with, but we'll see what the rest of the council thinks.
Okay, anything else? All right. 13, correspondence, Wisconsin Department of Administration, Town of Lisbon and Village of Sussex Cooperation Plan Review. Matters for possible closed session. 14A, motion to convene into closed session pursuant to the provisions of Wisconsin Statute 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the government body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. More specifically, the compensation of the public works maintenance worker position. The council will reconvene in open session after completion of the closed session to consider the balance of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
The roll call.
Henry?
Aye.
Schaefer?
Aye.
Valdy?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Grimmer?
Aye.
Price?
Aye.
Iker?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And just so you know, this is the last item on the agenda. All right, thank you, Mike. We are back, and we have a motion by Valdy and seconded by Henry to convene back into open session at 9:28 p.m. Okay, Henry.
Aye.
Schaefer.
Aye.
Valdy.
Aye.
Dean.
Aye.
Grimmer.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Iker.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. And there will be no action taken at this time. So, seeing no further business, we are now adjourned at 9:29 p.m.